Salute. Nick Streets are buzzing. We're back after All-Star break. Like nothing changed. We've got CT, EJ in the house and the chat. Salute to wherever you're at. And the Knicks pick up their first win after All-Star break and go for a season high, 7 games above 500. Julius Randle saved that All-Star performance for tonight. Not like the other night. We're here to talk about it. Gonna have some fun. Salute EJ. How we feeling?
Feeling great, CT. Welcome back from All-Star break. It's really good to be back on the show. What's up, Knicks fans? What's up, Knicks fans? What's up? The Knicks streets are buzzing. And yeah, that's a solid win coming out of the break. Julius was definitely in his bag, and he definitely went off. He wanted to let everybody know, just because Jason Tatum may have won the MVP for the All-Star game, he clearly wanted to show that this is still indeed, he's still in command of this team from time to time, sharing the load with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson having an off night for him, especially in the last 15, 20 games, but a solid comeback win, and there is so much for us to chop up. So how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, feeling good, man. I'm just enjoying that Knicks ball's back, and we got a lot to look forward to the rest of this season. You know, this stretch is key. Results went great tonight, the Knicks way. EJ, the Heat losing. We had Brooklyn losing, and the Knicks winning. And like I said, now 7 games above 500, heading into this stretch with 21 games remaining. And tonight the Knicks did it tough. Obviously down 11 after the first quarter. What a comeback! 19 points down. Julius Randle got the Knicks back into it, and then they won the second, the third, and the fourth quarter. Defense clammed down. Josh Hart doing hustle plays, and just a fun win overall. You know, good to get back into it and win a tough one.
Yeah, what's great about this win is that there's nothing like coming off an extended All-Star break. I mean, like, I don't know, for a lot of us, it was kind of weird to go 3, 4, 5 nights without a Knicks game. But to come back from such an extended break and to continue with a win, that felt great. Obviously, you and I were texting during the game. That first quarter was very concerning. But there are some positive things that I noticed during the first quarter. But 40 points or almost 40 points during the start of any game is concerning. But at the end of the day, the ability for them to come back to overcome a 19-point lead with a 19-point lead, which nowadays in the league, they are surmountable. You can get over them. But for the Knicks, they often tend to be insurmountable. But it was a quality win, continuing the win streak. And of course, you saw me smile a little bit when you said that Brooklyn lost, and that Miami didn't quite do what they needed to do. So obviously the ability to position and to jockey for position, particularly the 5th place in the Eastern Conference, this is a good night. This is a good Friday night. So cheers to everyone. Let's chop it up.
Yeah, you're right. Heading into this stretch now, I think 5th is the goal for this team, EJ. Like that's what the goal should be, because whoever's in 4th is going to be a nice matchup. Well, I think whether it's going to be Philly or most likely Cleveland, and now we are in great position now, healthy.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the signing. The Knicks had to add a roster spot yesterday. They decided to add Trevor Keels to the thing, which wasn't too surprising. You still got Knicks Twitter and Knicks Streets chat talking about Carmelo Anthony. I'll get your thoughts on that. On adding a big name. I spoke to Bill Pito, MSG Networks, the other day. And I think it's just right for the chemistry to keep this thing as is, develop and bring in a younger dude and give him this opportunity to establish himself in this locker room. And I think, why add more when you got Julius Randle, 46 piece, even on a Jalen Brunson down night? Yeah, Emmanuel Quickley really stepped up for me tonight, EJ.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no need to add a signature name, and I saw the other day Bleacher Report
Mm.
pretty much put out a roster full of people who are unsigned throughout the league, and some of the marquee names, whether it be a Serge Ibaka, whether it be, I believe, a Will Barton, a Michael Williams, a Carmelo Anthony. At this point, as much as I'm a fan of nostalgia, and some of you guys know that I love history, I'm a fan of history. History is what I do. There's a reason why it is history. It is something that can be in the past. What the organization is right now, where the organization is going, there is a median age, I believe, of the team and the roster being about 25 years old. As much as I love Melo, as much as I had the feels the other day when I remembered that this was the anniversary of the major trade and him coming home, and I sang the song just a little bit. Um, it's not the right time. I do feel sorry. On a side note, I do feel sorry for Melo not having a chance to really play out his career and having that final season, that swan song where he goes from arena to arena and just being lauded for the kind of player that he was. But at this point, it doesn't make sense for us to even have a conversation about number seven being on this particular roster because again, we've talked about this several times. There are gluts at different positions, and we're trying to clear the log jams to ensure that people get minutes. So I don't want to see Carmelo Anthony riding on the bench, being the 15th man, and hoping for a blowout to see him get rostered, to get some burn. Derrick Rose is struggling to get burned right now, so I wouldn't want to see Melo in the same position. But again, I'm excited about the direction of the team. I'm excited at the fact that they won this game, in particular on a night where two of the people with whom they're competing also they lost. So to make up a game and to move closer to that fifth position, that's solid. And this is something that I don't think any of us perhaps could have envisioned at the start of the season. So again,
Yeah.
kudos.
And it sort of connects with that decision, that question, EJ. Can you still try and win, compete for the playoffs, and develop along the way? And
Mm,
if we were to sign Carmelo Anthony, I don't know how much more that adds, in terms of the minutes he's going to get. And then you take away opportunities from somebody. Somebody's, we know we're not going to win a championship, but making the playoffs is good for development for the
yeah,
younger guys. They're going to get a taste of that. Throwing in a Carmelo Anthony would, sentimentally, it would be nice. But I think
yeah,
he still has something to give. I think that's the main story. But he can help a team like Phoenix, for example. He could help a team that's more likely to compete for a championship. And I think that's what a Carmelo Anthony should be doing. You know, um,
yeah,
and Trevor Keels was a player we drafted. He's been up and down in the G League, in preseason, summer league, but we drafted him. We invested in him. We used up a draft pick. I think it's the right decision to just give him a 10-day. I think they're also going to save some money. They're going to sign him to probably a second 10-day, and then
yeah,
maybe for the rest of the season.
yeah. No, I think there's something to be said about understanding where teams are at this point in their development, understanding where the Knicks are in terms of their development. Are we championship contenders? No. Am I okay with that? In the interim, yeah, because one of the things that championship contenders do, if you look at how they evolve, you have that team that's a mediocre team, go back to Philly about 8, 9 years ago and how Philly would just tank and tank and tank. One of the lessons that you learn throughout the course of the history of the league is that it's not just about tanking. It's not just about signing like, that great NBA free agent. There's also this idea of making sure that the players that are on your roster are in a development pattern. So the idea that we can be at this stage of development and see certain players grow, whether it be a Q dot, whether it be Emmanuel Quickley, who very, very quickly has become one of my favorite Knicks. Whether it be, and obviously we're going to talk about him a little bit later, RJ Barrett, who seemed to have seemingly taken a step backwards, but a Mitchell Robinson. And the reason why it's important that we talk about player development is that the more that these players develop, the more it allows you to engage in conversations about trading for that, all world, all NBA talent if and when a trade becomes available. It'll be unlikely for the Knicks to land that superstar via the draft. You never know. Obviously, we all talk about Giannis in the number 15 spot. But if a trade is available and Q dot seems to be that player that has an upward trajectory, or if it's Emmanuel Quickley, it allows you to maintain flexibility for other moves that will help round out your roster. So I'm okay with the Knicks competing because that means that players are developing and younger players are developing and they're becoming better assets.
Yeah, yeah, you said it, and that's what this season's all about, really. We're an age where we can build this consistency with Brunson and Randall under 28, and then of course we've got another even younger core which are getting great minutes. We bring in Josh Hart again. Yeah, big win tonight in Washington, ladies and gentlemen. CT with EJ, Nick Streets assemble tonight. Our road record improves, as the chat also says now. Ladies and gentlemen, the Knicks are now a huge, great record on the road, 18 and 12, which is great. We have a 17, we have a 16 and 15 record at home. So that needs to improve, and the Knicks will have a lot of opportunities. It's a back-to-back. We added again versus the Pels. So yeah, it was great to get back after this break. But man, the story tonight, EJ, Julius Randle. Um, I don't know if it was his season high. It wasn't his career high, but tonight, man, he was just hitting everything. He was going back and forth with Kuz. You know,
Yeah.
Kyle Kuzma was getting, yeah, he was getting a little full of himself, I think.
Didn't Kyle Kuzma date a Kardashian? So if or Kardashian Jenner, I don't know which part of the clan it was, but I think that might lend itself to it. And CT and I were discussing, and I think at some point, this might happen over the course of the summer. We might have to do like a top 10 Knicks killers. I think Kyle Kuzma may have officially entered that bottom rung of of Knicks killers. Who anytime he sees the Knicks, all of a sudden he thinks he just plays out of his mind, and had his foot been a couple of inches smaller, that 3-point shot at the end may have changed the course of the game. But going back to Julius, who's the focus of tonight's game, Julius really, really balled out. I mean, there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If we're rating players tonight, his game was an A+. There was clear decisiveness, and especially after the first quarter. I mean, the first quarter was really concerning. That deficit just seemed to grow and grow and grow. And for the ability for Julius to want the ball, demand the ball, to be decisive, to be efficient with his scoring, and to really force the Wizards to even engage in double teaming towards the end of the game. Um, Jason Tatum really he was renowned during the MVP conversation with the All Star game, but clearly tonight Julius had something to say, and he said it with all of his chest. So, good job, Julius. I mean,
Yeah, sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, you said it, EJ. Facts. Now potentially, Julius and Brunson, two out of the Knicks' future big three. Um, they're proving more and more this season that that's the case. If Brunson, which is very rarely, doesn't have a great game, Julius usually has a explosion, and that was the case tonight. Randall, 16 of 29, only played 36 minutes, got a nice rest, which links to the acquisition of Josh Hart. I keep saying, with Quickley and Hart off the bench, it steadies the ship a lot more. And I'm noticing Julius being able to sit longer to commence the fourth. And he was 7 of 14 from deep, hit all 7 free throws. Um, only pulled in 2 rebounds, however, although Washington never missed. So there wasn't many rebounds to go around between Mitch and Hart.
yeah, yeah, no, that was big. I mean, I think Julius's performance tonight, particularly when you couple it with how Jalen Brunson was playing, Jalen obviously wanted to play with the same level of aggression with which he had played before the All Star break. And, Clyde was talking about this. There's just something about the All Star break. And in particular, this was a longer break. So, rhythm for these athletes, these are finely tuned athletes. So I don't think it's a function of Jalen Brunson's talent. I just think that it was largely an off night because he hasn't played a professional basketball game in over a week. But the ability for Julius to have the ability to command the game tonight really said a lot, especially in the face of KP's first quarter. KP's first quarter where
Oh,
he went off and scored 19 points. That had all of the makings, all of the trappings of a blowout game, in particular because KP, that's the position that Julius was defending for much of the night in relationship to Mitchell Robinson as well too. So for Julius to be able to have such a fierce offensive game, it appeared as if it also then threw off KP in terms of his defensive game, and he seems all kind of out of whack the rest of the game. So I mean, his
mm,
Julius's game did several things tonight. It asserted who he was with regards to the Knicks' future, and I had been questioning that since last season. But it also showed that the pairing of Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle can work. Again, we have to talk about RJ, and that's a conversation that it seems more and more is going to have to be had.
yep, definitely. We'll be giving out grades, and the Nick Streets are buzzing, smashing that like button after a big win on the road. And yeah, like we said, the Wizards got out hot shooting, and this was a classic example of a lot of the modern day games changed with the 3-point ball, but the Knicks' key stat tonight won points in the paint, 58-32. So almost a doubling of points in the paint. Considering the Wizards shot so well, this is a classic example of you need a versatile offense. You can't just rely on the outside shot because no matter how hot you are, like the Wizards, you eventually the shot's going to stop falling. EJ and the Knicks punished them points in the paint tonight, almost doubled them. So you need a blend. You need 3-point shooting, and you need to be able to get to the rim, like Tom Thibodeau tries to do.
Yeah, and that was actually concerning because KP really should have had the kind of night that Julius had. The way he started, I mean, just shooting the lights out. I mean, I think the chase, the amount of shots he was hitting, it really should have been a dominant game for him. But the inability or the unwillingness for him to, go into the paint, um, that lent itself to the Wizards not really putting away the Knicks team that easily, very easily could have given up by the end of that first quarter. So the variety of offense, and like there was actually a play in the third quarter, I believe, where RJ decided, okay, mid range, I'm going to go into the mid range and hit a shot in there. And to me, like there's a variety of ways, even in today's NBA where everyone is 3-point happy, a bucket is a bucket is a bucket. And I know analytics suggest that the 3-point shot is the shot that you should take the most. But in terms
Mm.
of confounding and confusing the defense, listen, adjustments were made. I mean, I'm still disappointed in how much or how poorly the Knicks covered the three for the majority of the game. But how many 3-point shots did Bradley Beal make tonight? How many 3-point shots did KP make after the first quarter? There were some
Yep.
adjustments, and to the extent that they were effective, they did actually lead to a win tonight. So the ability to adjust is so paramount in this game.
Yeah, it's key. You mentioned Beal, that one late where the drop coverage just absolutely let him step into a wide open three. I was like, oh man, if we lose, that's the play everyone's going to be talking about.
It would be fitting, yeah.
Um, yeah, but salute to the chat, Stanley. Yeah, appreciate you, Killer Dogs, as well, highlighting Brunson's nine assists. Um, that's what a good player does. If their shot's not falling, what else are you doing? Jalen Brunson still on the floor, hit one of if not the biggest bucket, like Stanley said, EJ, the left-handed scoop. That's key. Finishing late, I feel good with Hart and Quickly now able to finish out. I told Bill Pito the other day that I think Tom Thibodeau has more options to finish games out, and I think in a close game, I feel a lot better now than I did early in the season.
I guess we're going to jump here to this conversation. Josh Hart on the floor. We had the conversation, I think, with Berman. The question as to whether or not Josh Hart should start. I don't think it matters because I think the statement is really who's ending the game, who's closing out the game.
Mm,
And the statement is abundantly clear. Like there are certain things that Josh Hart presents which are fundamental to like which are just fundamental examples of how basketball can and should be played. The energy with which he plays, the abandon with which he plays, the ability, like he and Jalen Brunson, I think, have competitions to see who has the most amount of floor burn at the end of the night. And that's commendable. It's not always about scoring points, but those hustle plays that sometimes don't appear on analytics, they don't appear on stat sheets. It's so clear, it's so evident. And I guess the concern again is, what does this mean for RJ? What does this mean for RJ closing out games? You know, it's a little. I mean, in as much as this was a great win, and as much as this brought us closer to the fifth position in the East, it does leave those looming questions that I guess for now we shouldn't nitpick or concern ourselves with, but
Mm.
they do. It is something to think about.
Yeah, great point. But in terms of Barrett's numbers tonight, and I'll go through Barrett's numbers. 28 minutes, he was 5 of 10, 50% from the field, 50% from three, 1 of 2, hit 3 of 4 free throws, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, a steal, 3 turnovers, 1 foul, +5, 14 points. This is more of the RJ Barrett that I'm okay with in terms of less shots but efficient. He was more patient offensively, I felt. And this might be the more norm now. We see EJ and Nick Streets with 28 minutes, like
Yeah,
he's in his fourth year, and ideally, he's a big piece of the future and something we build around. But the time has come now where if we want to take that next leap as a team, you can't cater to certain players. You just got to, highlight their strengths. And if they're not playing well, then we have a guy like Josh Hart now who can give us a lot more hustle, and it's just healthy competition.
it is. It's absolutely healthy competition. It's also, I mean, the reason why I bring it up, and I brought it up several times, is we can also look at it from the perspective of what took place towards the end of last season, and what we perceived RJ's role was going to be, given where we were at the end of last season versus where we are right now towards the end of this season. And I would think, all of us have egos. Like, I think it's pretty clear that CT and I, we want to put on the best Knicks content. We pride ourselves in the work that we do. We pride ourselves in like the brand of Knicks Buzz, and I think RJ has an ego about, his work as a basketball player as well. And I think the reason why we're bringing this up, and maybe others are considering this as well, is because what we're discussing right now, his role, is not what we were saying or what he could have imagined at the end of last season. There were a number of us who, myself, perhaps, I think, I don't remember specifically, suggesting that this may have been RJ's team at the start of the 2022-2023 season. Um, if you are aware of what's happening in Nick's, Twitter sphere or Nick's YouTube sphere, and you're hearing this, like, you might have pride as a basketball player to think, okay, this is going to be my team next season. And for that not to necessarily pan out the way that you may have predicted or perceived it to be, that might be difficult. But at the same time, the Knicks are doing much better than we all anticipated. So, um, I can imagine many games where RJ is exactly where he was at the end of this game. And that's
Mm.
hopefully being a supportive teammate from the bench.
Yeah, and I keep mentioning RJ's fit, more minutes with the bench because he can get up and down. Tonight, again, EJ and chat, the Knicks won fast break points, which is becoming more common than it has been earlier in the season. 8 to 7 fast break points. So we know Josh Hart likes to push it, Quickly likes to push it. If RJ's playing with them, I think he's going to free him up a lot more. I think playing in the half court with Brunson and Randall, RJ's not going to get as many opportunities in that half court, and especially if he's not getting in rhythm and he's not getting frequent shots. I liked a couple of the mid-range shots that he had tonight, and I think the key for Barrett on this team could be play more with the bench.
Yeah. Yeah. Just own the bench, just own that second unit. I think there's something that happens when he knows that he has the ability to direct the ball. Particularly if, I think we were concerned about the fit with regards to Julius and RJ being left-handed, ball dominant, loving to charge and, just bull their ways into the lane. That doesn't seemingly work with two of them on the floor at the same time. I think that works better. with the second unit because you have more spacing. You have the ability to feed to Emmanuel Quickley. Josh Hart is someone who doesn't need the ball as much to make things happen. Obi, that's another player for whom we're going to have questions. But and Hartenstein doesn't need the ball as much as well too. So I think with the second unit, that usage rate should go up for RJ. But again, like it is fascinating how basketball can change season by season, um, where our perception of what our perception and our projection of where we thought RJ might go at the end of last season, and now that we're coming to the close of this season, they're two different places. And in part, it's because Jalen Brunson has over delivered in terms of any projections that we had for him. So obviously, one basketball, 48 minutes, that comes at the cost of some of the usage rate for RJ. But again, I'm happy with the win tonight. So
Yep. Yeah, in terms of like what you said and the healthy competition, I think it's going to allow RJ to focus more on areas of his game that could help him get to another level, fine tune the finer details. It ain't just about volume scoring and getting as many shots up as you like. Teams, young players usually get to do that on bad teams, but we are no longer a bad team. That's the biggest element in this thing now. We're heading into maybe potentially the fifth seed and a juicy matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers, Philadelphia 76ers. We upgraded the trade deadline. Like you said, Brunson's play has surpassed anyone's expectations. Emmanuel Quickley, for me, has surpassed my expectations as well. Quentin Grimes is now the starting wing. So there's been a lot of changes from the start of this season to now. And I think it allows RJ to I guess, to have a small reality check in terms of like, okay, I really do need to focus on the finer details this summer. And if I remain a New York Knick, I'm going to focus on a skill set that's going to complement the rest of these guys, which is more distributing, playing better defense. I think awareness on the court and maybe getting up and down more, like we said, yeah, with the bench.
yeah, this is going to be a definitive a breaking point kind of off season for RJ. Um, and it's not again like, and I just want to make this perfectly clear. I've learned, in doing Nick's content, it's important to be really clear, especially when you're engaging in nuance. This is not to say that RJ is a bad player. In no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that or implying that. What I'm suggesting is that as the team improves, the question of fit will become more and more of a dominant theme because it's clear that there are certain pieces that are keepers at this point. I don't think there's a single player. I don't think there's a single Knicks fan at this point who regrets the Knicks signing Jalen Brunson.
Mm.
I
Yep.
think that's a near universal, unanimous. If there's a Knicks fan that is upset that Jalen Brunson is the starting Knicks point guard, I don't think they're really a Knicks fan. I think it's pretty clear that Julius Randle will be here for the foreseeable future. I think Emmanuel Quickley will be here for the foreseeable future. So as certain parts start to become, okay, these are cornerstone pieces, now the question of fit relative to those cornerstone pieces becomes more and more paramount. So at this point, RJ is one of those pieces where we thought he was going to be the cornerstone, but at this point, he seems to now need to fit more around those other pieces than those pieces fitting around him. And again, it's not an indictment on him as a player. It's just a reality check, just saying, like, listen,
Yeah.
this is what it is at this point.
Yeah. Yep. Like we are. Yeah. Battling for that fifth seed. And Randall and Brunson have exceeded expectations now, with Randall hitting his 18th 30-point game tonight. Brunson sitting on 15. With those two playing well off of each other, I want to highlight an example tonight, EJ, about three guys trying to blend together on the Wizards. We had KP, which had 19 points at the end of the first quarter, right? And KP absolutely disappeared. So that's a case of if you got Beal, you got Kuzma who went off, and then KP suffered in the second half of tonight. So that's just another case of if you have three guys, one guy is usually going to have to sacrifice, and he's going to have to be able to play well off the ball. We had the Heat big three, the Heatles. it was Chris Bosh. His game had to suffer so that, LeBron and Wade could be on the ball a lot more. So yeah, with Randall and Brunson, RJ's gonna have to pick his nights.
I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have in a basketball discourse is there is a proclivity for some fans to want to stack talent and fit be damned. And, I think much of that comes from the success of the Miami Heat, but many of us forgetting, like we remember LeBron James being LeBron James. LeBron James has pretty much been the archetype that he is for the better part of his career. Dwayne Wade was pretty much allowed to be who he was on the Heat. But I think when you do that dissection of, the 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012 Heat, what a lot of people forget, especially if they're so inclined to just want to stack as much talent as possible, is how much of a sacrifice Chris Bosh made in his game. Toronto Chris Bosh versus the Heatles Chris Bosh, two totally different players. And that came with a sacrifice to his game. So in this post Heatles NBA, where a number of teams are looking for, or a number of fans want to replicate that model of having three top tier players to be like the heavies on teams, you can't forget that one of those players has to be willing and able to adjust their games. Draymond, and obviously I'm not trying to compare Draymond to Chris Bosh, two different talent sets, but Draymond plays a particular role in relationship to Clay and Steph. Um, you could even beg the question, was that one of the contributing factors to the breakup of the Draymond, Clay, Steph, Kevin Durant relationship? Like, there are but so many balls, there are but so many shots, there are but so many minutes. I'm not a fan of the super team model because it people have egos, and like one of the things that the analytics can't measure, ego, it can't measure pride, it can't measure people's emotions, it can't measure people's relationships with one another. um so like there's so much we can talk about with regards to like those super teams, but going back to the point of RJ, the fit has to really be like the preeminent driving factor this offseason.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'll highlight again, I'm comfortable with RJ's stat line tonight, a very efficient 28 minutes, 14 points. I was in the plus still. Turnovers were 3, but didn't get in foul trouble as well. So yeah, he did his thing in certain moments, looked more composed. What else did you see from tonight? Let's talk about Mitchell Robinson, his return, EJ, 10 points, plus 13, and 12 rebounds, 4 offensive.
Yeah. It was in my notes, as I was watching the game. I put down first quarter. He looked spry. I mean, he looked spry. He looked bulkier. I don't know if it was the hairstyle,
Yep,
where he
he
looked
looked
sleeker.
bulky.
He
Yeah,
looked bulky. He looked like he
yep.
had really been determined not to just take time off and not to try to engage in as much basketball activity as possible. But the offensive rebounds, that's just a component that Mitch adds, which is unique on the roster. There aren't that many players that are able on our roster to do that, and it was very clear that he was going to add that dimension. And to RJ's credit, in the first quarter, there were a couple of looks where he was able to feed Mitch down low, because he was already thinking, okay, I'm going to get um, Mitch going. I'm going to get another player. I'm going to pass instead of just being like, bull in China shop, heading straight down the lane. So it was good to see that Mitch was involved in the offense early on, and on the offensive board as well too.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely looked bigger, stronger on the block, even like that couple of great hands too. Not enough gets
Yeah,
said about Mitch's hands. You could rifle
yeah,
a pass down low, and he catches it.
yeah.
He's no Nerlens Noel Stonehand. Um,
Or sometimes Hartenstein is like that.
yeah, yeah, you're right. But one thing that stands out to me is no free throws. 28 minutes, 0 free throws from Mitch. but the 12 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, and also want to highlight Randle's hustle plays with 2 steals, a key fast break opportunity where he went coast to coast and did the scoop layup over Kuz.
Yeah, definitely. That was actually one of my notes as well too, for the first quarter. Even though the first quarter was horrific in terms of the amount of shots that Washington was hitting, there was something that I noticed in terms of a lot of the players having active hands and their hands being in the passing lanes. It's not something that I've seen very often, but like just making sure that your hands were up and that you're deflecting passes. And so that happened a few times, and it just seemed as if the defensive activity picked up. So even though that first quarter was nothing to write home about, there was a level of energy and activity that existed in spurts with certain players that as we got to the second quarter, as we got to the third quarter, particularly by the third quarter, that defensive activity translated not just from the passing lanes, but it also then translated to getting steal opportunities and fast breaks. So whether it was Josh Hart, whether it was, I think there was a play where you saw RJ get a fast break chance and Julius as well. That was commendable. So yeah, that was really good.
Yep. Yeah, welcome back, Mitch. We missed you. It's hard to believe you only missed 14 games, but boy, did they
Yeah,
go by fast. And
it really did.
salute to iHeart and Sims for holding us down. Obviously, Sims didn't get in, so that was what most people predicted. iHeart got 20 minutes. But let's talk about. I want to talk about Emmanuel Quickley because man, tonight was just something I'm getting used to from Quickley. I've taken it for granted now. With 30 minutes, 6 of 11, 50%, 3 of 6 from the deep. Got to the line 2 times, hit one, uh, 3 rebounds and assist, 16 points. Man, in my eyes, he's just that steady hand off the bench. When this game was getting out of hand, his play kept the Knicks in it.
Yeah, I think the fact that he closed the game was a statement yet again. Um, it's an
Mm.
indication as to how much trust Coach Thibodeau has in him. It also is an indication. Thank you very much. Um, Thank you. It's also indicative of, yeah, he's just one of those players who seems to do a number of things right. Like, in this league, and we've talked about this before, like the idea of having a player that does one thing well,
Mm.
you're good. But quickly seems to do a couple of things really well. So whether it's, spreading the floor, whether it's rebounding, I mean, his rebounding and his defensive intensity, um, that's to be commended. So I've said this before, and I'll probably say this the rest of the season. He's become one of my favorite Knicks for this particular iteration of the New York Knicks. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he could be one of the most beloved Knicks right now. When you talk to everyone, there's hives and there's different supporters. I don't meet too many people, you know, not in Quickly's corner. I know Sherwin's one of them,
yeah,
um, but there is some. But yeah, chat, keep it buzzing, smashing that like button. Nick Streets here, and give us your thoughts on Quickly's game. Josh Hart, EJ's fourth game as a New York Knick. Wasn't a big scoring night, but again, hustle play after hustle play. Um, he was a team second high in assists, 4 assists and 6 rebounds, 2 of them offensive, and only had 1 3-point attempt. But this is why this pickup was so good,
yeah,
EJ and chat, was that when he's not scoring, this is what we got Josh Hart here for, is to impact winning, impact the game, and a couple hustle plays kept so many balls alive. I lose count.
yeah. And that's like again, like when we look at the stat line, it's the difference between watching the game and reading the stat line. That stat line would seem as if, well, what's the big deal about? Uh, But those hustle plays, they transform the direction of the game. Those 50-50 balls, those moments where you have a decision to make. Am I going to like, break to try to get a fast break score, or am I going to try to like get this burn on the floor to get that loose ball? Josh Hart is the person who's thinking about, okay, I'm going to die for the loose ball. I'm going to be the energy on this team, and I don't have to score 20 points. I don't have to score 30 points. You need those kind of glue guys. You need those kind of hustle guys. Um,
Mm.
I will say this. I both appreciate and actually have an issue with the fact that he wears number three, but John Starks. But at the same time, it's kind of funny that he's wearing John Starks' number because John Starks, in many ways, had a similar kind of energy, that same kind of hustle, that same kind of like dog in him. Um, I will never forget the jaw jacking in Michael Jordan's face. That kind of energy was so important for the 90s Knicks, for anyone who was around who watched those 90s Knicks. It's important to have those kind of players who have that kind of energy. So if for the grades, he definitely passed the test tonight for me.
Yeah, as we head into the playoffs, man, he's a quintessential deep playoff kind of guy late in the game.
Yes.
I think one foul was a bit rough. Like I think the foul on KP, he was trying to get
Hmm.
around KP. He slipped himself, but I think KP sold that one. He sold
Yeah.
that to the ref.
I'm not gonna knock the refs too much because I think sometimes the refs can be too much a part of the show. Where like if
Mm.
there are too many stoppages in play, if there are too many replays, if there are too many whistles that are blown. But this seemed to be the kind of game where the refs were even rusty, because like one of the notes I had was, have there been any whistles this quarter? Um, so a part of me was not complaining because that means that there's better flow to the game. But also, like, I think that the game ended with like what, 16 or 18 free throws altogether. That's a bit weird in terms of a game. So officiating was somewhat questionable tonight. But I do thank them for making this a quick game.
Yeah, exactly. I like that too. And of course, yeah, we added Trevor Keels. Derrick Rose is still in New York Knicks, but we did hear a report from Chris Haynes. Based off Dirty's point, EJ, what are your thoughts about Derrick Rose staying? Do you think there's a chance he gets bought out?
I don't know. I mean, from what he said previously, he seems to be okay. That could be the public conversation. If you're smart in politics, what you say publicly versus what you say privately may not necessarily be the same thing. So Derrick Rose has been nothing but the consummate professional in this second tour of duty with the Knicks. So he hasn't seemed to have said that I've seen. I may be wrong, and there may have been an update within the last day or two. But he seems to be satisfied with his role on the bench. He seems to,
Mm.
when watch him in pregame, he's putting up shots in case he's needed. But it is. I do agree with Dirty that it is kind of sad to see um, his career come to an end in this way. But we're also. I tested CT this during the All Star game. I don't think a lot of us realize that we are actually on the cusp of like a new generation of NBA players taking the reins from the LeBron generation, that 2003 draft, 2004 draft. Those players are by and large out of the league, so Melo's no longer, there. D Wade is gone. Chris Bosh is gone. Um, Within a year or two, that generation of NBA stars, including Derrick Rose, they won't be around. And so this is the hard part of the game where you see those preeminent stars of yesteryear, they fade away. And the businesses are never too kind when it's time for
Mm.
those players to leave. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
sad.
yeah, it's just like Melo. I think they just need to make that quick, swift decision and go on a contender. If that's why are they still need to ask themselves, why am I still playing ball? Is it to win? Then just say I want to buy out and go somewhere. He chose money first. He re-signed with the New York Knicks and he got a nice contract. So and that's coming to an end. If he wants to keep playing, in my opinion, decide whether or not winning is the most important thing, and then just go latch on to Milwaukee or latch on to Phoenix or something like that. Melo, I understand, is a unique situation. He's got roots here. His son in the city, and that's close to his heart. Maybe he wants to just finish in New York, but yeah, with these other guys, I think even a finish in Chicago would be nice for Derrick Rose's legacy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, there are a number of players who, unfortunately, this is the nature of the league where, you know, it isn't, you don't get that like
Mm.
that year long goodbye tour as much anymore. I mean, don't let guys, we can't forget that Melo was out of the league before this.
Mm.
This is not the first time. Um, Serge Ibaka can't get a job right now. Will Barton can't get a job. I mean, there are a number of players who
Mm.
5, 6 years ago, if we had this conversation, we'd all be like, "Yeah, come on, you're crazy." Kemba can't
Mm.
get a job, and it happens quickly. It happens quickly in this league. Let's not forget, what was it, 3 years ago? Kemba was an all-star. I mean, so um, and here's the crazy thing. Listen, I mean, we can make this prediction, and I don't want to root for anyone not to have a job. If it doesn't work out with the Clippers, Russell Westbrook might be in the same position this time next year. It's a league that's really, it isn't about the sentimentality. Like, we might be sentimental, but these front offices, they're going to do what's best for the organization and the bottom line. So, yeah, I mean, the league
Yeah,
is changing. It's a new crop of players.
yeah, and I don't specifically feel like he's in a doghouse. I think if we make the playoffs, and there's an injury or there's a situational moment that calls, I think Tom is still likely to play. Derek, it's just there's extra bodies here now. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but with the Trevor Keels pickup, like we commented earlier in the show, I'm glad we gave a roster spot to a dude that we drafted. Um, there's all likeliness he's not going to factor in at the moment. He's young, he's still raw. He's had a very slow start to his pro career, up and down, but he's got some potential. But he doesn't really address a big need. It's 6'4". He's a bit bigger and he can defend bigger guys, but um, I was thinking about a dude like Stanley Johnson kind of size if we did add more to another younger sort of wing prospect that's got size.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that D Rose, I agree with you. I don't think he's in a doghouse or he does, no, at this point in his career, he's not in any kind of doghouse. I think it's just a function of the swings and tides of this particular season. And I think that once Tom Thibodeau made that stand of saying, okay, there are only going to be 9 players in the rotation, and he made the tough decision to sideline D Rose, and let's not forget Evan Fournier is there too as well too. Um, and then there started to be some level of success. It's hard to go back on that. It's hard to say, okay, just because this is D Rose and just because we understand what D Rose meant to the history of basketball, and just because Tom Thibodeau and D Rose have a personal relationship,
Mm.
it, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Dirty doesn't feel like he'll last beyond 10 days. It could be just to top up a make good offer to top up a dude's bank account, and then give another 10 days to Darquan Jeffries, and then decide. Um, Also, let's not forget, playoff teams can still add a player to their roster only a few weeks before the season ends, so we still have time. I think that player has to have been bought out by a certain date, though. There are still heaps of players that are still available out there, and if the closer the Knicks get, let's see. All eyes on that fifth seed. We had the Heat lose tonight. Brooklyn got beat down. It's all in front of us, ladies and gents. This is why we brought Josh Hart in here. We were a buyer at the deadline. We ain't selling nothing at the moment. We're trying to sell out and win every single possession.
And I'm sorry if I keep on smiling every time you say Brooklyn loss. The season, I mean, again, like, these are things that we can't predict at the start of a season, but we did talk a little bit about the possibility of Brooklyn having some sort of something happening during the course of the season. I don't think CT saw this happening. I definitely didn't see this happening, but The nature
Yep.
of the league is that if there is inner turmoil, your team has to take advantage of it. You know, whether it be injuries, let's say for Chicago, or if it be like poor relationships in a locker room or players demanding trades in the case of Brooklyn, or let's take a look at Atlanta. Um, Again, fit, relationships, those are critical elements that don't appear on stat sheets, but they do have an impact on the actual stat sheet. So um, I'm happy for where we are. And let me also say this too. I think a lot of us at the beginning of the season, a lot of Knicks fans were debating as to whether or not it were appropriate for the Knicks to even try to make the playoffs. I think there were a lot of Knicks fans who were
Oh
of the
yeah.
mind that, oh, we need to tank for Wemby, we need to tank for Wembyana. Honestly, guys, like in retrospect, if we had been tanking, especially if the season played out the way that it has, with the Nets doing what's happened to them, with what's happened with Atlanta, a lot of us would be frustrated because then a lot of us would say, but wait, how could we be so bad in a field where so many lanes have opened up? So, part of my optimism is we have succeeded and all of these different things have taken place, and yet and still the Knicks are in the thick of the playoff chase. So
Yep.
things can change any season.
Yeah. In terms of roster balance now and chat EJ, I'll make this point about the Knicks' success this season. I think a lot of it has to do with obviously Randall and Brunson's play, but in terms of that specifically, there's balance. There's a guard and then there's a big man. If you look at a team like Atlanta, their two best players arguably are Trey Young, DeJounte Murray, two guards that you know need to play off one another, but they don't exactly have that dominant big man. You have Cleveland though that have two good guards and they have a couple of nice big men. So I think balance in this league is key. If you have a nice stud at the guard, you have a stud big man, generally you can play inside out. You can do a lot more things. If you just got two guards, the guards can only but do pass the ball to each other and do damage in the same areas. But if you have two different guys that can do damage in different areas, it's tougher to game plan.
I was actually just researching Cleveland's record so far, and
Mm.
I'll keep on saying this. We have certain lines that we say over and over again. You can't measure a team's success just by itself in isolation. You have to measure it in relationship to other teams. And you know, I am more and more of the mind that we can't just talent chase. It has to be talent plus fit. And Atlanta and what's happened in Atlanta is going to be one of those examples of how you can have players that have a lot of talent, but it may not be the right talent, it may not be the right fit. And let's not forget that Atlanta paid a lot for the talent that it has for this roster this particular
Mm.
season. Let's
Yep.
not forget that. Like, in as much as we're celebrating how well the Knicks are doing this year, that DeJounte Murray trade
Oof.
did not come lightly. And it did not come lightly, and it's not producing the results for the cost of that particular trade. So,
Yeah.
again, I need for all of us to be honest as fans and to understand, like, okay, would I have wanted DeJounte Murray on this roster? Yeah, but again, talent, fit, what is it that's happening in Atlanta so that they haven't really succeeded in the way that their talent would suggest?
Yeah. I think they got a lot of mediocre guys that aren't elevating the franchise, like DeAndre Hunter and John Collins, who
Hmm.
forever seems to be on the trade block. And I think they messed up not trading him earlier because there's only so many trade blocks you could have a major piece on, and he's going to be not motivated. He keeps hearing his name out there, and that brings me to what they had to do. They fired the coach.
Yeah.
Those guys didn't play for the coach. He's gone. On the flip side, the New York Knicks, when we were backs to the wall, Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson stuck with their coach. They could have got Tom Thibodeau fired.
Easily.
It was a pretty bad point this season where if they had mailed it in, Tom Thibodeau would have been out of here. But they went
Easily.
the other way, and they played for Tibbs. They got him out of this hole. They got the team out of the hole, and that's the opposite of what happened in Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta is one of those stories where, again, when there are certain deals that they cost you more than what it's worth. And again, that's a team that clearly, like it, I know that they're discussing Quinn Snyder becoming the coach
Yeah,
for that particular team, and maybe that will like lead to some sort of spark. But and I do believe they won tonight. But
yeah,
again, if a roster is willing to quit on a coach, that's not a roster I'd necessarily want to invest in long term. That's concerning. So, what will we ultimately say of that DeJounte Murray trade? What will we ultimately say
yeah,
about the Atlanta Hawks of the last two seasons, maybe next season if they bring it back again next season
yeah,
under Quinn Snyder? But we can say the same thing about Chicago. I mean, Chicago, what's going to become of them, and how much their roster was ballyhooed, 2 seasons ago, and now Lonzo Ball is gone for the season. Even though they've had a really dominant win tonight, um, this is where again building and building wisely. Um, it's not as easy as taking people's stats lines and just smacking them together and saying, okay, let's get the top five scoring talents in the league and assemble them together, and that we should win a championship. This is seemingly incredibly difficult. So
oh yeah, yep, yeah, and I think size matters too. Pause. Um, you you Trey Young, your best player is your best offensive player, but one of the worst players in the league.
yeah,
Um, I think they miss. You go back to, was it 2 years ago when they defeated us? They had Danilo Gallinari, a dude who actually played a nice role for them. He was a
yeah,
stretch big man, and they're lacking that. They're lacking more big men with versatility. John Collins, I keep mentioning him. He was supposed to be a big part of that core. There's a reason why they keep trying to trade him, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a question, CT. I know we didn't talk about this, but who would you say is the most disappointing team in the East so far?
Oh, that's a great question, man. I would
And
have
chat,
to
feel
say
free.
there's obviously quite a few. I predicted the Heat slide a lot more. I predicted Chicago's. I felt more strongly, but it's out of Atlanta and Toronto, and I'm gonna have to choose the Raptors
Hmm.
because they have a playoff roster to the Raptors, and everyone thought Scotty Barnes. That's why they felt so strongly about the Raptors being better than the Knicks. They were
Yeah,
like, Scotty Barnes is the next thing,
yeah,
Fred VanVleet and Pascal and all of that. But they have a pretty good roster, but for some reason I think they've missed the big man spot, which they addressed by getting Jakob Pertl.
yeah. Toronto's interesting to me because yeah, it feels like we've been talking about Fred Van Vliet for like the last
Mm.
4 seasons, 4 or 5 seasons, like in terms of um, taking buzzer beater. Don't get me started. We've been talking
Yeah,
about the Raptors for like the last 3 seasons, but I don't know if he's going to take that next leap into that next stratosphere in terms of players. Um, Likewise, yes, Atlanta's confounding to me, and I know we never really took them seriously, but Washington to me is one of those teams where it's just like, at what point, well, I'll just put it this way.
mm,
I think that this offseason will be a pretty active offseason because Toronto has to make adjustments. Um, the Hornets have to make adjustments. Miami has to figure out what they're doing because at this point, when your big move is a buyout signing of Kevin Love, that means that you've kind of maximized your ability to improve that roster, like on the fringes of it. So I think this is going to be a really interesting offseason. I know we shouldn't jump ahead too far, but again, I do think that some major moves and major pieces might be moving this particular offseason because the East and some of these shocking teams. that didn't perform up to par, some moves are going to have to be made by some front offices, and the Knicks might have an opportunity to improve again with this roster.
Yeah, yeah, you said it. I think the Washington Wizards tonight, you could
Oh, absolutely.
classify them as disappointing, and I think they're missing that connector because Bradley Beal isolation, Kyle Kuzma isolation guy, KP can't create for himself. That's what you saw tonight, ladies and gentlemen. You saw a team with three offensive, talented guys, but it's just basically an offense where it's just one on one. It's like they don't have that point guard connector that can get them all easy looks. They all had to create for themselves, and I think that's what's not going to work with this Washington unit. You know, DeLon Wright, spot up shooter tonight. They missed a guy like, they had a guy like John Wall who could at least distribute. You know, Washington need that point guard. I feel, and I
Yeah, I'm
salute.
going. Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just highlight Buzz's point. The Nets aren't a disappointment this year. They're a disappointment every year.
Wow. All right. For those who are watching on replay, please direct your comments to Buzzer. No, but I think that the Nets, they're one of those teams where I kind of feel sorry for them, as much shade as I've thrown to them, like in the last few years. But they're an example of, again, of like, many of us want to like remodel and redo the 2000s Heat, and it's not that easy. Like, it's not about some players are just not the ones you want to bring into certain markets and have them coalesce and come together, because the way they come in sometimes will be the way that they leave you. And if you don't have the organizational structure to really be able to deal with them leaving, they will destroy your organization. And right now, I kind of do. Maybe you caught me in the right moment, especially because the Knicks overcame a 19-point deficit. But right now, I do feel sorry for Sean Marks. I do feel sorry for Joe Tsai,
Ooh,
because the way that those two players who I'm not going to mention, um, that organization was upended, and what they could have been versus what they actually ended up being. It's to me, it's a cautionary tale for my favorite team, the New York Knicks. Whomever they're targeting to be that number
mm,
one person, I hope it's not just talent. I hope it's a person who's more interested in winning and winning together as a unit.
yeah, exactly right. We all feel the same way towards Brooklyn. A salute to the whole chat. The streets are buzzing as the Knicks are 7 games above 500. The best position of the season. Smashing that like button. We got Ron from Still Knicks fans in the house doing great work. Big things, Ron. Appreciate you. And a Daras in the chat. Nick Yak, Buzzer Beater, Dirty Dancer. The usual kings in the chat and queens, Geraldine. And yeah, Dirty's point about the inmates. I think let's say there's a line to cross between acquiescing to a Kevin Durant and a Kyrie, and then there's going too far. I think they could have kept some of their younger guys, still brought those guys in, and not signed like a DeAndre Jordan. Like they they did too much to appease those guys. Like that that was unnecessary. It's like Kevin Durant, Kyrie, you can come, but we're not giving your friend $10 million for 4 years. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well, especially like, I mean, the Brooklyn saga. There were just so many moments where it should have been just clear and apparent that these are not the guys to whom you give the keys. The whole, I think it was the comment, they don't need a coach. That's concerning. If Michael Jordan needed Phil Jackson to win 6 championships, y- come on. And we can have the Michael or LeBron, debate, but Michael Jordan has admitted in almost every interview that Phil Jackson was able to unlock his ability to reach another level of superstardom, and being able to transcend the sport of basketball. If perhaps the greatest player, if the player who's clearly on the Mount Rushmore of the NBA needed Phil Jackson to have players to whom you give the keys who say, we don't need a coach, and pretty much got a chance to hand select their coach, that was an indictment. And like, I'm not a huge fan of this guy, and I don't know if he's ever going to see this, and I hope he doesn't because I might be barred from Madison Square Garden. But perhaps one of the smartest things that James Dolan ever did was saying no to the Kyrie KD package. And I know that's hard to say because I think KD's an amazing player, but imagine if this had played out in Madison Square Garden. Imagine if, this happened to the Knicks. Like this would be
Mm.
brought up in every television show, every comedy, every
Oh
movie.
yeah,
Like this would Charles Barkley would bring this up on every single NBA on TNT broadcast. But
yeah,
because it's Brooklyn, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it does. It's clear that there's certain players you just want to keep away from an organization.
yeah. I was always worried about their age too, and I know
Hmm.
KD and Kyrie were still at a quality high level, but the Kevin Durant Achilles, that was the big question mark for me,
Yeah,
and I wasn't sure of Kyrie's dedication or his knees as well. It remains to be seen, like how much these guys have. Phoenix might have a small window with KD and Mavericks and maybe the Lakers next year with Kyrie might still have a short window as well. So, we're building something sustainable. We're trying to be good for a long time. Um, yeah, classic good lesson learned, I think. And we're building with two all stars or one and a half all stars with
yeah.
this situation. Grimes rising star. Chat EJ, give us your thoughts about All Star Weekend. Anything stand out about that? I thought Quentin Grimes, man, I was hoping he would pull out that MVP. He was on fire.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I've watched many, 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 many All Star games, and I was trying to figure out my favorite, moment of the All Star games. Um, I think my favorite may have been the Rising Stars game, um, with the second being the 3-point shooting contest. Uh, Q Dot, I think maybe next season we'll just really see that breakout, clear focus if he has some time to really develop and understand more his fit with this roster. I think he got off to that unfortunate start with being unhealthy at the start of the season. But that boy has some game. He definitely has some game. We saw it during summer league. We saw it during the Rising Star. Was hoping that he was going to get the shot of being the most valuable player for that. Um, Not going to say that much about the dunk contest. Um, there's not that much to say about it. I think they should just officially have the rule that if you're over, 6'7" or 6'8", this is not for you. We don't know how to judge you unless you're Dwight Howard and you're more of a character. Uh, but yeah, and the
Yeah,
All Star game itself, that's another conversation for another game, another day. But it was good to have a lot of Knicks representation though that weekend.
yeah, it was a good sample, good learning experience. Obviously, the 3-point shooting didn't go according to plan, but it did tonight for
Yeah,
Julius. Maybe he needs a hand in his face
yeah.
to unlock that Steph mode.
Maybe that's the next evolution of the weekend. The All Star weekend is like we start
Yeah,
adding elements, like the regular 3-point contest, but then the 3-point contest with a hand in your face.
and yeah, EJ chat. It was 7 of 14 tonight. I think there was one round in the 3-point contest. He only hit 8, and he had 7 tonight with a hand in his face.
CCT, you're the one who brought it up. I didn't bring it up, so I'm just gonna stay clear of it. But yeah, it's I do think and maybe this is a conversation we have off season. There are some things that have to happen for the All Star weekend to make it fully enjoyable. Um, I Julius is someone who's improved in terms of 3-point shooting, but clearly he was going to struggle in a field with that kind of field. Would I have been happy if he had brought it home, but it was going to be an upwards challenge for him with that particular field.
Yeah, but he's locked in on the real thing. That's what lets me know
Yeah,
what's important for
absolutely.
Julius. Yeah, he's won MIP. He wants to get back to being All NBA. I'm sure. Um,
Yeah,
which I don't know of his chances this year. What are your thoughts? He could make an All NBA team.
absolutely. I mean, there are three. So first team All NBA, second team All NBA, third team All NBA.
Mm.
I think that if and I'm gonna just look this up quickly because we can almost look at it in terms of who was there last season. Um, I think without seeing the rosters, so I'm looking it up
Yeah.
right now as we speak. Last year, the All NBA team first team was Luca, Devin Booker, Giannis, Jason Tatum, and Joker. I am pretty sure all three of those guys will appear again this year. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so as well.
Second team, Steph, Ja, DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Durant, and Joel Embiid.
We'll take out DeRozan for me.
Yeah, I think DeRozan's the guy who may not reappear on this year's All NBA. And then third team was Trey Young, LeBron James, Pascal Siakam, Carl Anthony Towns. I think I'm missing one person.
Mm.
And Chris Paul. Yeah, so it's Chris Paul. Sorry, Chris Paul, Trey Young,
Yeah.
LeBron James, Pascal Siakam, Carl Anthony Towns.
Yeah. Chris Paul, not not had a very nice year. I think.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Maybe Brunson ends up with something. He ends up with
yeah,
MIP or ends up with an All NBA. But Drew Holiday's there. It's gonna be tough. But the main thing is, yeah, I don't think, whilst it's good for individual players, I think that the main goal this year is as a franchise to show that we're moving ahead and in sixth seed now with 1.5 games back of a fifth
yeah.
seed, and I feel good about a first round matchup. It's going to be tough though, but I just hope we can obviously win more than one game like we did against ATL. But boy, is
Yeah.
our roster better than that one. Talk about closers. We got greedy dogs that can play defense. Um, Hopefully, Julius Randle takes that next step in a playoff series like last time. He has more options. We know Brunson can be a load in the playoffs. He's done it with Dallas. He can go off. I think this team got a nice rest. Tonight was a little bit of rust coming out slow. It was like they were still letting their food settle, and 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 they put the foot on the gas. Their throat chat. EJ. They won the second, third quarter, fourth quarter.
Absolutely.
Buckled down. The shooting from Washington went cold, and I feel for Bradley Beal. Like tonight,
Yeah.
he didn't impress me.
No.
He talk about an All NBA guy that's getting paid what he's getting paid. Like, is it just me, or did he look sort of like not disinterested?
Well, for this is the first season we've started to hear um, he may want out. I think like in years past, like the last 3 or 4 seasons, I think people were just like ever since the LeBron James the decision, there's been an NBA hype machine that's understood that drama sells. That's apparent. And whether it's Stephen A. Smith, whether it was Chris Broussard back in the day, Woj is actually really good about it. But like those guys, they started to understand that we as NBA fans, we love the drama, we love the palace intrigue, we love the idea that someone might be on the move. So ever since 2009 and 2010 with the decision, there's always been someone who might be on the move. And in the last 4 seasons, Bradley Beal's name has always appeared as one of those guys who might be on the move. I think now it actually might be legitimate because he's always rebuffed it. Like, he re-signed. But I think this is like the first time where it's starting to seem as if he's not incredibly happy. At least that was what seemed to be on display tonight. And some of the DC conversation with they have to now start to show him they're interested in building a contender. That seems to be the talk of the town.
Yeah. Yeah, mixing it up, scoring, playmaking. But Josh Hart just been that boost that we really needed. Um, Obviously tonight scoring wasn't Hart's thing, but
Hmm.
we'll give out some grades, EJ, and chat. Give us your grades for tonight, and I'll start with Josh Hart since we're on him.
Hmm.
Yeah, tonight off the bench, just 5 points, was a zero in the plus minus, 6 rebounds, two offensive. But talk about key plays down the stretch, knowing where to be on the floor, getting steals, stopping fast breaks. Um, he's a smart defender. He really is a great
Yeah.
two-way player. And I think we're going to see his scoring average go up because he averaged 9 points, but he's definitely going to get more minutes with the Knicks. I don't think he's played any less than like 25 minutes. Tonight was 27, and the more that Tom Thibodeau falls in love with him, the more he's going to play, EJ.
Yeah. Um, and we do know that, and Berman talked about this, there is a psychology and rhyme and reason to Tom Thibodeau's rotation. And as he gets closer to the playoffs, he's going to be tuning up for it. At this point, it's pretty clear that the Knicks will be making the playoffs. So as he gets closer to the playoffs, as we get closer to the playoffs, I do imagine that Josh Hart's role is going to grow as well. So for me, it's a solid B plus, A minus for Josh Hart. I
Ooh.
want to give him an A plus, but my A plus is reserved for one player tonight, and I'm grading everyone based upon that one player. But Josh Hart was really, really incredible. So an A minus, B plus.
Yep, nice. I give Hart a B. Dirty gives him a B minus, and Jarvis a B as well. Salute. Manchild, yeah, on the money. 4 and zip as a New York Knick. Let's let's keep this thing rolling, man.
Yeah.
Him and IQ it could be like one of my sneaky favorite duo on this team. Like just two-way guys that score and defend. I just want to see more and more and more of them.
And don't seem to get tired.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And Obi, and we're playing faster with Hart. That's a lot
Yeah.
of people have said that. We won fast break points again, and we rarely do that. So next man up, let's go back to the top. Julius Randle, easy grade, A plus for me tonight. What about you?
A plus. A plus. Head of the class tonight.
Yep, kept the Knicks in it, shooting hot. How about Mitch's return? 28 minutes, 5 of 6 from the field, 10 points, and a team high plus 13.
Well, when you have that plus minus, you're doing really well. So I would probably give Mitch an A minus, just A minus A.
Mm, yep, yeah, great comeback. I'll give him an A. Jalen Brunson's down performance scoring, but 9 assists, 4 rebounds, plus 7.
He gets an A as well. I don't want to penalize him
Ooh.
because of what he did um, over the course of the last 10, 15 games. What he was doing was all-star worthy. He, is arguable if he was an all-star, but, for the fact that for what he did, especially in that fourth quarter, the charges he took, um, my man gets an A.
Yeah, you great point. I think that was kind of a block, but we were lucky to
Yeah.
get away with that. Yeah, Brunson gets a. I'll give him a B, just because of the standard. I've got to hold him to.
That's a good point.
And
Yeah.
Braided Mitch, yeah, man child, good
Yeah.
look bulkier, got more swag. He's ready. Is Mitch, man? He was chomping at the bit to get back. And Star J Barrett, efficient night, but 14 points didn't close the game out.
RJ is going to be hard to grade nowadays, man. Um, I'll give RJ. Yeah, he's hard to grade.
Yeah, easy on the
He ju-
grades, eh?
Um, because they won, I'll give RJ a B, a B, B
Yep,
plus, B, B plus.
I'll give RJ a B, B minus, and Quentin Grimes only had 21 minutes. So this is that first game in the 4 games Hart's been here since we've seen Grimes' minutes like really reduced. Only 5 points, but was plus 8. Um, only 1 3 ball, but was 50% from the field, 2 assists, 1 steal.
I'd say I say Q dot gets a B minus.
Okay, I give Q I'll give him a C plus. And Obi, 12 minutes, 1 of 4 from the field, -2, 2 points, 2 rebounds.
Yeah, Obi's now in this weird place where there has to be some sort of evolution of his game, um, where it's going to be hard for him because he's not necessarily a creator of his own shot. And
Mm.
if RJ is going to be the ball dominant person in that second unit, shots will be harder to come by for him. So it's going to be weird in terms of his offensive development in that second unit. So for me, he's going to be somewhere in the area of a C, C minus. I do love, his energy, but again, not
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Dirty goes with the D minus. Jarvis with the B minus for RJ. For Obi, I'll give him a C. And I Heart, 20 minutes, 100% from the field, 10 rebounds, 3
Yeah,
offensive,
yeah,
-9 though, 4 points.
yeah. Listen, I heart with 10 boards. I'm happy with that.
Yep.
What else did I need from him? You know, I needed him to really put, to rebound, particularly because we weren't clear if the Wizards were going to start missing shots. And once they did, it was going to be important to really get those boards. So for me, I heart is a B minus.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, he rebounds. I mean, strong. 3
Yeah,
offensive, 10 total. Um, J Hart, we gave the grade quickly. 30 minutes, 6 of 11, 50% from 3, 16 points. Kept the game in control when it was getting out of hand.
A minus A.
Yeah, yeah. I got to give an A to Quickly. We
Yeah,
don't win tonight without
yeah.
Quickly's game. 30
And his
minutes, big
defense.
time.
And his defense.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, great point. Now, quick look ahead. Welcome anyone else that's just come in. The streets are buzzing, smashing that like button. First of a back to back. We now have New Orleans, EJ, and then it gets tougher. We have Boston, Brooklyn, the
Yeah.
Heat, and Boston. Give us your thoughts on this mini stretch ahead.
Well, the important thing is to win the games that you have to win. No one would ever say, well, some people might actually, I should never say everyone, but there's no way for the Knicks to become 82-0. There are games they're going to lose. There are games that they're meant to lose. I think this next game against the Pelicans is really important. It's important to establish some sort of home court dominance, in particular if we're looking for some sort of 4-5 matchup where you can't win well, it's improbable to win 4 games on the road. It's important for the Knicks to develop some ability to beat good teams at home.
Mhm.
So this is an opportunity to really see what they can do against a pretty tough Pelicans team. Now, are the Pelicans what they were at the start of the season? No. I'm not even sure if Zion is healthy right now. Is Zion playing tomorrow night?
No, he's not.
So if you have a Zion-less team, and that's another conversation for the offseason too. Like we have to start making sense of what Zion is. This is year 4, and almost every season there have been huge stretches of time where he's not playing. At some
Do
point,
we
that
do we give him his boy RJ and we take Brandon Ingram off their hands? You know?
listen, you know how I feel about Brandon Ingram. If there were any way whatsoever, by the way, for those people who are watching, we're not saying they are trading for him. We're saying if it were possible, that'd be amazing. But at any rate, about the schedule, um, a, I think this is the game that they have to win. Um, Winning against the Celtics at home, for some reason, we seem to play them tough. It doesn't always mean that we win, but there's a possibility of playing them tough. But the game against the Nets, which follows the Celtics game, come on, this
Well,
is
yeah,
not this is not the same Nets team from 4 weeks ago. This is a game. So I really
yep.
expect them in the next the next 3 games to go 2-3. Hopefully.
Okay, yep. Yeah, New Orleans is going to be tough, a little matchup. Let's get Jose Alvarado back for that, stealing that MVP from
Yeah.
Q Dot. And
Yeah.
yeah, he's going to get juiced up being in New York, where he's
Absolutely.
from. Like last time, he balled out. That's when Alvarado actually made a name for himself that game. But I'm looking forward to that back to back. I think hopefully everyone's still feeling fresh. The Boston game is another great challenge. Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum, what are they going to do in the playoffs? Brooklyn, like you said, let's beat them down again. We own New York. We here, and then the Heat. That's going to be a huge swing in the standings. That
Yeah.
a big win against the Heat could really tip the favor into the New York Knicks in terms of sixth and fifth, and
Yes.
avoiding the play in.
Yeah. And let's not forget, like, we haven't mentioned them a lot. Well, I don't think we've mentioned them at all this tonight. Cleveland has hit a bit of a rough stretch. And from some of the stuff I've been reading, there's some people who are talking about some fans who are now starting to jump off the Donovan Mitchell bandwagon. So that's something that if you checked out Cleveland's media, where some of the radio shows have been, soliciting calls, and some of the callers have been anti Donovan Mitchell. That stuff is important in terms of teams feeling confident. And so if we can win against the Heat, if we can win against Brooklyn, maybe that's the team you do want to face. Not to say that it's an absolute bet that we can beat them, but if there's a little bit more of in the way of them not necessarily feeling the same confidence they felt at the beginning of the year,
Mhm.
that's to our advantage.
Yeah, Geraldine makes that point about Tibbs in the playoffs as well. Hasn't got out the first round since 2014.
Wow.
So when they can scheme against you, EJ, in a series, that a lot of people unfairly did hang on Randall in that Atlanta series. Obviously, we didn't have Mitch,
Mhm.
so it was a tough matchup. But all eyes on this playoff matchup seeding now for the New York Knicks. 21 games remaining, hitting our form at the right time,
Yeah.
right chemistry, signing chemistry signings like Trevor Keels, not trying to add yet other big names. So that's the story. Will the New York Knicks adapt in the playoffs? Let's see. I think we have smarter guys on the court, Geraldine. I think another extension of a coach in Jalen Brunson. Josh Hart knows where to be on the floor. I think Mitchell Robinson's going to be a beast in the playoffs as well. I'm looking forward to that. And I think the East's got to be scared in terms of facing the Knicks. Whoever's in that third playing sixth, or fourth playing fifth, I don't think they'll want to see the New York Knicks. That'll be a tough
Wow.
7-game series.
Yeah. We had this conversation earlier. I think this was with Dan Favale early in
Mm.
the year, when we talked about who were pretenders, who were contenders, and who would just be duking it out at the bottom of the league. The clear East contenders are the Bucks and the Celtics. And I think that there's probably a room to argue about
Mm.
Philadelphia, although there's still questions. The rest, though, I think the Knicks are one of those teams that you don't necessarily want to play them because they're going to be somewhat of a challenge. And that's a lot to be said, and that's a lot to be proud of, when we consider where we started the year, when we consider the Fire Tibbs chants and the Fire Tibbs conversations were really, really palpable when we hit December. Let's not forget this last year, we were having the same conversation, Fire Tibbs. For some reason, this team, when it seems like it's on the brink of collapse, it starts to pull it together. And this season, we're actually seeing it mature into a viable playoff candidate.
Yep, definitely. You said it. And we're always going to keep one eye on the draft for those draft junkies. Got a great guest lined up that's going to be popping soon. we're going to preview March Madness and players to look out for the Knicks in March Madness. For those not too familiar with the college prospects, we'll be talking about it. Don't you worry. And the Knicks still have the Dallas selection, which is looking in the 18th spot right now, and there's wings aplenty in this one. EJ, looking forward to looking at some draft because I think the Knicks, whether they select a player or not, they're going to be big players on draft night.
Yeah, I mean, this is an opportunity to improve the team, and we have to give it up to the front office. This is an imperfect front office, but when it comes to selecting certain players, obviously we can have the OB conversation. We could have that, but let's not forget this is the same front office that selected Emmanuel Quickley. This is the same front office that selected, Q Dot. This is the same front office that have selected a number of players that are getting significant burn and or rotational pieces. And so let's see if they can do it again.
Yep. And Dallas, I'm not too sold on them. In 6th spot, Kyrie and Luka, whether they move up the standings or not, there's still going to be about 8 to 10 teams with better records than them. So I don't think that Knicks pick's going to become too bad. It's going to be maybe around that 16 to 22 range, I think, worst case scenario. So if the Knicks do want to make a selection, look out for that, man. Plenty of draft content out here. EJ, before we get out of here, it's been a great show. Any
Definitely.
thoughts towards the road ahead?
No, let's keep on trucking. I mean, we're very exciting to start off and to leave that All-Star break behind us and to start off with a win. Looking forward to what happens tomorrow. It's important for us to win as many games as possible in this last 21 games. Now that we've played our 60th game, I believe. So I'm excited. Thank you so much, CT, for having me on again tonight. So good to talk to you, brother.
It's been amazing, as always. Back on it tomorrow. Team No Sleep out here with the best fan base in the streets, the best chat, the best panel, best guests. You already know what it is. Salute to the chat. Salute wherever you're at. Replay gang. Let's go. New Orleans up tonight. And let's see what these Bockers can do. And it's been a great show. Enjoy it. Enjoy your Friday night. We'll see you back soon. Peace, everyone.